Single sign-on, or SSO, is an authentication concept that allows users to authenticate once to be granted access to a lot of different services and applications. Since re-authentication for each service isn't needed, users don't need multiple sets of usernames and passwords across a mix of applications and services. SSO is accomplished by authenticating to a central authentication server, like an LDAP server. This then provides a cookie or token that can be used to get access to applications configured to use SSO. Kerberos is actually a good example of an SSO authentication service. The user would authenticate against the Kerberos service once, which would then grant them a ticket-granting ticket. This can then be presented to the ticket-granting service in place of traditional credentials. So, the user can enter credentials once and gain access to a variety of services. SSO is really convenient. It allows users to have one set of credentials that grant access to lots of services, making it less likely that passwords will be written down or stored insecurely. This should also reduce the overhead for password assistant support and removes time spent re-authenticating throughout the workday. So what's the downside? Well, an attacker that manages to compromise an account has a lot more access under an SSO scheme. User credentials will grant access to all applications and services that account is permitted to access. So a big plug here for using multi-factor authentication in conjunction with an SSO scheme. But this opens a new channel of attack, theft of SSO session cookies or tokens. Instead of targeting credentials directly, attackers can try to steal the SSO tokens directly, which will permit wide access, if even for a short amount of time. Stealing these tokens also lets an attacker dodge multi-factor authentication protections, since the session token permits access without requiring full authentication until the token expires. An example of an SSO system is the OpenID Decentralized Authentication System. This is an open standard that allows participating sites, known as relying parties, to allow authentication of users utilizing a third-party authentication service. This allows sites to permit authentication without requiring the site itself to have authentication infrastructure, which can be tricky to implement and maintain. It also lets users access a site without requiring them to create a new account, simplifying access management across a wide variety of sites. Instead, a user just needs to already have an account with an identity provider. To ask for authentication, first the relying party looks up the OpenID provider, then establishes a shared secret with the provider if one doesn't already exist. This shared secret will be used to validate the OpenID provider messages. Then, the user will be redirected or asked to authenticate in a new window through the identity's provider's login flow. Once authenticated, the user will be prompted to confirm if they trust the relying party or not. Once confirmed, credentials are relayed to the relying party, typically in the form of a token, not actual user credentials, which indicates the user is now authenticated to the service. Now it's time for a practice quiz on authentication.